Hey, Floyd here. I want to talk to you about working out because we all know that we have to work out, and I want to point out a couple of things that maybe you haven't heard about. I know everybody's probably heard about stretching, and you've got to stretch and exercise or prior to exercising so you don't strain anything. Okay. Well, what we're trying to do is lubricate all the fibers and all the tendons. You've got all of these fibers that make up the tendon, okay? And each one of those flexes like a rubber band. But they're flexing and they're moving inside your body, and they need to be lubricated. And the only way they can get lubricated is by moving. It literally is. It's just by moving. And that's why good trainers will tell you you need to stretch out a great deal before going into any kind of a workout mode, running or weightlifting, anything. And that is because they want you to lubricate those fibers so that you don't destroy something. If you see my notes behind me, they're talking about 4% of that stretch, it will go back to its origin. Okay, so that's working okay under that stress. But most people that are working out are pushing themselves in order to get stronger. At least that's what this is meant to be understood. I go to the gym every day, and I'm only there for maybe 20 minutes, 45 minutes, something to that effect. And I try to do as many different little things as possible to get me ready for my day. But what I've noticed is these people that are in there that are straining way over the 4%. Worse, some of them are even holding their breath, but we'll get to that in a second. When you're straining all of these fibers, and if you see my notes, I don't know if you could read those or not, 8% to 10% additional strain will actually make those fibers not be able to go back to origin. They'll be damaged, microscopically damaged, or worse, snap, because they've been put beyond their ability to stretch, okay? So in order to get them lubricated, they need to move. It's a lot like, can you bend over and touch your toes? Well, why do you need to do that? Well, you just simply need to be stretching out. But you can't forcibly get yourself down there. Well, you can, and that's where you get over that 8%. But if you do a gentle bend over to touch your toes, side note, I learned this from a 60-some-odd-year-old man that was working in the shipyards at the time that I was back in the early 80s. And this little guy, he would run up those stairs to this tower of overhead crane. Well, it was an overhead crane. It's a self-moving crane. You've seen them at ports where they're way up there in the sky. And this guy would run up those stairs 2 or 3 times a day to get up inside the box to run all the switches and so forth, run the crane. And I said, man, you're doing great at your age and racing up there. And what is it that you're doing? And he said, all I do is touch my toes 20 times a day. When I get up in the morning, the first thing I do is I bend over, touch my toes 20 times. And that's his routine, and then he comes to work. I recommend you maybe do a little bit more than just that. But that's been a gospel in my mind that I try to do that every day so that I'm keeping myself limber enough to not damage anything. So that's one of my regiments. Even when I'm working out in that little 20 to 40 minute period in the morning, I'll stop lifting weights or working on a machine and bend over and touch my toes until I get to at least 20 or more. And I'm just stretching all of my back. And I'm almost to a point where I can darn near put my elbows on the ground. But anyways, so in order to keep those lubricated, obviously you need to be hydrated. Hydrated with something besides what most of those people out there in that gym are drinking. They've mixed up the concoction so that they can build big muscles and be strong, and it's a chalky stuff that they mixed with water. when in actuality, when you're working out, you're creating inflammation within your system, and that needs to be flushed out. And the only thing that's going to flush that out is good, clean water. You're already sweating, and your body is trying to get that inflammation down by sweating. So it's moving the lubricants now, so you're losing the water in your system. So I really stress that consider drinking that stuff either prior to the workout or after the workout. But during the workout, try to have water. It's going to be more beneficial, definitely. Because whether you're drinking water or you're drinking that concoction, your digestion system has to break that down into a molecule that can be absorbed into your cells. All those fibers are fiber cells, and they need a drink of water. They need to be able to suck in some energy, water, nutrition, and spit out the inflammation and the garbage. They've got to do that with good quality water. Well, let's get back to the stretching whole deal. I wanted to share this with you. I don't have a dog in the fight. That means I'm not getting paid to say anything about this particular person. But this is something they might consider. I bet you can find this on Amazon or pretty much anywhere. Like I said, I don't get paid for advertising this, but this lady has really got it figured out for how everybody can do stretches and feel better about themselves and get a better working body and not make all this, damage all of this stuff. Another point I wanted to make is when I see people working in the gym, they're only doing half the rep. So like if they're curling something, they're already up here and they're just going, huh, 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 huh. So they're only moving ever so slightly, okay? Now, getting back to the lubricating of those fibers, you're only using just a little bit, when if you were to literally go all the way down and all the way up, you have a chance to lubricate all of those fibers, okay? See how those things will get dry and sticky and snap when you try to do something? You got these big muscles, but if you extend them too far and try to do something with strain, you're liable to snap them because they're dry. Those fibers are dry inside where they have not been moving, and they will rip. That's terrible. If anybody's ever ripped something, I have. And actually, how did I do that? How did I rip? I was working out basically, but I decided to start throwing a baseball. Actually, I got on this baseball thing, and I used to be able to pitch when I was in high school, and I did a pretty good job at that. So, yeah, what the heck? I was back in the military, and I figured, oh, I'll pitch on this team. Well, anyways, so throwing the ball would raise havoc in my arm and my neck, and I would feel tearing going on in my neck. And it was because I was doing a motion that I didn't do very often. My job did not really require me to throw a ball. So I wasn't moving those tendons in that direction. Had I have worked out in that process prior to each game and so forth, I might last the whole game being the pitcher. And otherwise, I'd be warming the bench for most of the game because my arm, I couldn't hardly lift it. And that's simply because you haven't lubricated all those fibers. You go for a run and you're fatigued, and and you get up and there's aches and pains. All of that stuff is the microscopic damage that we've done to our tendons because we have not lubricated them the way we should. Anyways, that's enough of my jabbering. Stretch. My buddy Bob, stretch out those tendons, those fibers to the full length, not just short little reps, and breathe. Two of the most important products you can have. Those are the same two products that NASA's been looking for on other planets. What? Air and water. That's what gives life. It gives life to you. Air and water. Breathe all the time when you're working out. Those guys, let's go real quick here. Those guys that hold their breath, face turns red, all their blood vessels puff up. Have you ever seen those guys that blow up balloons to make dogs and so forth? And if they blow that up and then they let the air out, it's kind of, it didn't go back to origin? No, your blood vessels aren't doing that either. You're damaging your blood vessels. You're damaging your heart because it's pushing because you haven't been breathing. You should count your breaths, not your reps. Ooh, I like that. If you got any value out of this, like and share, join my channel, and I'll catch you next time around. Thanks.